Hi, welcome back to Music Theory Logic. My name's Andrew, and today's a music theory breakdown that I'm super excited about. I worked hard on this recreation. Today we are talking about Unity by TheFatRat. Love that producer. Let's go ahead into the Logic session. Also love the name, The Fat Rat. Super cool. He must be a fun guy. If you haven't heard this track, this is a pretty popular song. I think this is the track that first brought my attention to The Fat Rat. I would characterize the Fat Rat's style on this as melodic future bass. I love this song. Without further ado, this is my breakdown of it. If you haven't heard one of these before, you're not going to hear the original track. You're going to hear my version of it. I've recreated every piece of this instrumental to the best of my ability. Think we're accurate here. The sound design isn't perfect, but again, I don't have the rights to the track. My goal is to really showcase the different layers that are happening in the song, the development, the phrasing, the scale it comes from, and all of that. If you find these helpful, you would help me out a ton by subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, here it is, my version of Unity. Thank you, The Fat Rat. This part's a little empty without our vocal. Our drums. Now we could call this a breakdown. We could call this a bridge. Call it whatever you want. Here comes our cool build up back into the beat drop. Cool. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Once again, that is Unity by The Fat Rat. I highly encourage you go and listen to the original, as that is nowhere near as cool sound design wise. Go and support The Fat Rat. He has a bunch of really, really cool music out there. So without further ado, let's go into the music theory stuff that's going on. This song is in the key of E minor. More specifically, I'm going to talk about E melodic minor. We've covered some harmonic minor pieces on this channel before. Harmonic minor you will remember as a minor scale with a raised 7th scale degree. Today we're talking about melodic minor. Melodic minor has a raised 6th and 7th scale degree. Now, we don't necessarily have to call this song in the key of E melodic minor. We could also describe the one chord that has a note in it that's not in our E minor scale as a borrowed chord, and I'll go over both of those. So just for fun, I wanted to talk about E melodic minor. So again, melodic minor is a minor scale with a raised, in other words, higher 6th and 7th scale degree. E minor would have E, F sharp, then the letters G, A, B, C, D, E. So instead of the C and the D, we're going to have a C sharp and a D sharp. Now, in pieces of music that are in melodic minor or harmonic minor, the normal non-raised scale tone is also fair game. So in music theory classes in college, when they teach this scale, they'll tell you that when we play these scales, we play them with the raised scale tones going up, and then coming down, we have the lowered scale tones. It kind of just highlights that this is still a minor key. Let's hear that. Nice. So you can probably tell that it feels kind of weird when it turns around. The chords that we're going to need, we basically have 5 chords in this song, or I guess 6, since we get a really quick one. Most of the chords are going to be E minor, C major, D major, and then an A major. This is the chord that has the raised 6th scale tone degree. And then we'll also find a G major chord. We get G, B, and D in that. So the D is an example of a typical E minor note. And then we also get a really quick stab of a B major chord. This would be the full dominant in the key of E minor that has the D sharp and the F sharp. Cool, let's go through the various sections. So a lot of people coming to this video are going to want to hear us talk about the melody, so we'll go into that first. One of the cool things about this melody, which is pretty obvious if you have a little bit of ear training, is that it begins before the downbeat. We refer to that as a pickup. A pickup in music is where we start before the first beat of a song. Many famous melodies that we're all familiar with do that. It adds to some complexity and makes the downbeat like impactful, so I like it a lot. We'll play it once and then I'll tell you the notes. So this is our first part of the melody. This melody's phrasing is basically A, B prime, so the different ending the second time. We are using the notes from our E minor scale. We're going B, A, G, E, D, E. So this note is in our minor key, not our melodic minor. Cool. We basically repeat that 3 times, and then we get an ending. It goes E, G, A, B, A. These are in both melodic minor and natural minor. Cool. Then the second time we get this ending, we climb up our scale, right? It's essentially the same notes, just up an octave. So we do this same ending right here. Same thing, but up an octave. Same ending part of the phrase, which is identical to the beginning. One thing about in music theory, when we're talking compositional theory and writing melodies with pickups, the rule is that the ending of the phrase is always going to be shorter by that much of the pickup. So you can think of it as like we're picking up for 5/16 notes. So the last 5/16 notes is where we're repeating. So technically that's the end of the 4-bar phrase. Cool. So that happens twice, and then we go to a second melody. Now, the second melody is this part. All right. So that melody, again, we are using E natural minor notes. Our melodic minors, really, we're going to find that in the chords. We're going E, 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 D, E, G. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned yet, you'll notice that a lot of these 16th notes are not on the downbeat. In essence, we have something that's called swing. Swing in music is where every single rhythm doesn't hit on the exact same timing, like perfect. Swinging 16ths means that the second 16th the whole time is a little bit late in time. If you're using quantizing in your DAW, most of the time you will see a swing function. So I'm at 38 in Logic Pro. Cool. And I did that basically by ear with the track. So E, 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 D, E, G, E, D, B. E, 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 D, E, and then up to the E, D, B, A. And then we're going up. This is basically on the 5 in the key of E minor. We're playing the B multiple times, B, 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 A, B, up to D. This note right here is also in our natural minor. This gives us a minor sound for that time. And then B, A, G, that whole thing repeats a second time. And then we're basically repeating only the second time we repeat this second half of our main melody, we stop short because this is like the fill right into the drop. So that covers really all of the melodic content for this song, aside from what happens in the vocal, which is during this breakdown section, which was kind of empty because we didn't have the vocal. All right, moving along, we see the chord progression. So the melody is really not complete without the chord progression. Because that repetition feels like exactly the same, but when we add the chords, feels a lot bigger. And so those together are really everything aside from the bass line, which has the same notes, but all the harmonic, all the different notes from this song, Unity. So going to the chord progression, in essence, every time the first half of the melody happens, we're going to have these chords. The chords are an E minor, followed by a C major, followed by a D major. So these three chords are in our E natural minor. This is the chord that I am choosing melodic minor to explain. Essentially, we get an A major chord. It's inverted, so an A major over an E. Every other chord's in root position. That repeats, so those chords just on their own without the melody sound like this. All right, so this final chord, an A major, we're in the key of E minor, we find an A major. How could we explain that? Well, right before it, we're playing a D major. So this A major is actually the 5 of this chord, so a 5 of 7 in a minor key. So we could describe this chord as being borrowed. I've talked about that in some other breakdowns. I've also talked about how this music theory thing is not really like a hard science, where it just gives us a vocabulary and a framework to talk about music. So it's not like one person could say, oh, this is definitely E melodic minor, because we would actually, in my opinion, have to ask the composer of the track, Mr. TheFatRat, what he was thinking when he wrote it. But again, both of those terminologies in music theory would explain that chord. So harmony-wise, it's a 1 chord, a 6 chord, a 7 chord, and then a basically an A, which would be a 4 chord in the key of E, but a major 4 or a 4 in melodic minor. Cool. The second half of the melody gets a second chord progression. This is kind of cool. We're starting on the C major. It's a C major, then a D major, then an E minor. So we're kind of walking up. Same chords we've had. It's the 6, it's the 7, that's the 1. We're going back down. That's a G major chord over the D. So a G major in the key of E minor is the major 3 chord. Cool. This mostly repeats. We go C, D. We go C, but instead of the D, we get our A major. We saw that in the verse or the first part of the melody. We then get our same G major over D. And then finally, we get this ending riff, which is a D major 4 times, followed by a B major chord. It's technically B, D sharp, and F sharp. The voicing that we have in the song is over the D sharp. So we have D sharp, F sharp, and B. This one chord is what tells us we are definitely in harmonic minor for E minor. And then again, the A major we're using to describe the song as melodic minor. Cool. The only thing left to talk about is the bass and the drums. And then we'll talk about some of the arrangement. So this song has some pretty standard drums. We have a standard backbeat, so the snare's hitting on 2 and 4. The kick drum is swinging out kind of like a hip-hop beat. This is, again, the first drum beat, so we're going kick, snare, kick, kick, snare. This is a dotted 8th and a 16th, or on the first box, and then the 4th box in a 16th note grid. We have our cymbals going on the 2nd, 8th note the whole time. And again, we have swing happening on a 16th note grid. So only the ones that are 2nd, 16th notes, like the 2nd kick, will be affected by said 16th note. Then we also get this snare fill into it. We're basically going kick, snare, snare. So these 2 snares are also affected by the swing. So pretty standard drums, nothing really that crazy, but the coolest thing about this song is the groove, well, aside from the melody and the sound design, but the groove, the swing goes a really long way to making this feel less like in the box, less super typical, I guess. Cool. So then moving into the drop section, we are doing a lot of similar stuff. One of the biggest difference is that the drums are way bigger. So I'm using some samples here. I'm using samples from Somatics. Our kick pattern is similar. We're doing a kick on the 1, kick on the 2nd 8th note after the 2nd quarter note. We could describe that as a dotted quarter note and an 8th note. And then finally the kick on beat 3. That pattern basically repeats after 4 measures. The second 3 measures just have kick on 1. Cool. I'm using the secondary kick sound. It's kind of like a quicker one that's doing our 16th note. So this is the same rhythm we saw in the beginning. You'll notice that that is behind time. That is, again, that swung 16th note, so it's behind in time. And then finally, the snare is happening on beat 2 and 4 again. Nothing really that crazy happening. Let's just hear that section. So I didn't talk about it. That at the end of the 4 measures, instead of kick on 1, we get kick on 1 and the and. Or I guess 1 and the 16th note. Once again, every second 16th note. So if it's the 2nd or the 4th 16th note of a group of 4, not 1 and not 3, but 2 and 4, it's going to be affected. So there's the second one affected by the swing, that is. Cool. Finally, let's talk about our bass. I'm using 2 basses in the drop. I'm using a sub that is super, super subby, and then I'm using a fingerstyle bass from Logic Pro. We are playing the same notes, but we're playing them in octave. So let's look at our sub line. These are basically just doing the root notes from all of the chords, the full root notes. So again, we got an E minor, a C major, a D major, and an A major. The chords that we have in the actual chord instruments are inversions, but the lowest note that we have is our root note. That's like the name of the chord. So we got our A right there for the A major. And then same thing's true for the second half of it. So one of the really interesting things about this song is that we basically have like one melody. Now the melody is more sophisticated than a lot of melodies we find, like one we're in melodic minor, so we have more interesting chord progression. Two, it's got like a very different section, section 1 and then section 2. But what I mean arrangement wise, we have the exact same melody happening. It's like 16 measures here. We then hear it with these giant, bigger synths. It's kind of a drop section. We then have a post section on the same pluck we had in the beginning. We get different stuff during our bridge. Then we get that melody just one time cut in half. So once of the first melody, once of the second. And then finally, same back into an identical drop section, except with a bigger sound selection. So again, the sophistication in the song is in like a section, and then the arrangement is pretty straightforward, just applying that. So you could, if you wanted to write a song like this, the main interest has to come from our melody and our chord progression. Then applying it to a structure like this and mixing it and designing it into a future-based genre like this be somewhat straightforward if you have your melody and your chords. Cool. So finally, I glossed over the bass rhythm. The rhythm is again with the swung 16th notes. It's on the same beat as the kick drum. So we're going E, E, E. These are like triplet eighth notes, or a kick drum on 1, a kick on the 4th 16th note behind time swung, and then a kick note on the 2nd 8th note after beat 2. Cool. That happens twice for the E, then the C. And then finally on the D chord, we get just straight 8th notes. And the A chord, we get a slightly less hit. We don't get the second, the swung 16th note there. So some subtle nuance happening there. The bass instrument, our mid bass, as we'd call it in sort of EDM production, but our mid bass is playing the exact same notes with the same rhythm, just up an octave. Then over our second part of the melody, where we go C major, D major, E minor, G major. It's again doing the root notes. The rhythm is a lot more consistent. It's kick on, or a bass on beat 1, a bass on the 4th 16th note, bass on 1, bass on the 4th 16th note. This phrase, again, we could call that a dotted 8th into a 16th. That is a motif of the song. We find that in our melody. We also find that in our drum and our kick pattern. So again, music is all about repetition. We don't want to take one note and repeat it the whole time. That would be super boring. But if we come up with an interesting pattern and we repeat the whole melody, or we repeat a chord progression, all of that is stuff that we find in virtually like all kinds of music that people like. So finally, let's go to our bridge. So our bridge section has a different harmonic sequence that happens. We're basically going a D major to an E minor, back to the D major to an A major. So it's super similar as the beginning. We're just getting rid of the C major chord and kind of changing the order. That essentially repeats with a different phrasing. So we get our D major, a D on top. Then we're going to our C major. So this is like the first part of the song. We have the suspended D note on top, so that makes that start to feel like a C major 9 chord, slightly more interesting harmonies. And that sequence repeats on the 4 measures. One of the interesting things is just on a drum note, we have the same steady 8th notes that we've been seeing. On the cymbals, they're filled out, so not just on the 2nd 8ths, but all of the 8ths. Then we get, you'll see I have it labeled bridge drums. Our bridge drums is a syncopated pattern that's in halftime. So if you get my music theory text, which is linked below, I talk about in the drum or our rhythm chapter, I talk about backbeats. Backbeats refers to what happens with the snare. Typically, the standard backbeat, most common backbeat in popular music, is on the 2 and the 4. That's what we find most of this song. Then on this bridge, we get what most of us would call a halftime backbeat. In other words, we get half as many backbeats. That happens on beat 3 instead of happening on 2 and 4. Altogether, that then sounds like this. Nice. Definitely makes that section a lot more interesting. We've heard, again, the same melody, different sounds, interesting arrangement, but we've heard it repeat enough that this really breaks it up. It's not a terribly long song, so this happens sooner than we would expect in a lot of instrumentals we've looked at on this channel. The one sound I haven't talked about is our finger snap. The finger snap is happening on a standard backbeat. So we get our standard backbeat. It's happening on 2 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Keep it playing. And after this section, we get those bridge drums. It's the same thing, stuff repeating. Because the snare really pops through the mix more than the snaps, I would say it takes over our backbeat in that time. Cool. Then we get our 8-bar sort of build-up back into our main section. This build-up has the same melody that's happening in the song that is cut in half in essence. So we hear the first melody and then the second melody. So we used to hear 8 bars of each. Now we're hearing 4 bars of each of those. You could think of it as the main section cut in half. The drums are the same as we got in the introduction. The melody is again the same. We get a couple new things here. One, our bass line changes for the first time, and it's not just root notes. It's going very similar to how it happens for our second half of the beat. So we're starting on C, going up to D, going up to E, and then finally a G. The difference is that we are doing some interesting rhythms here. So it's C, 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 D, D, F sharp, D, E. So this right here is like a bass melody. Our bass player's getting to sing a little bit on the instrument. So D, F sharp, D, those notes are in our chord. It's like a 1, 3, 1. And then up to an E, that repeats. So it's like the same pattern that we got on the first one. The phrasing of this bass line continues to be consistent. So we get something that happens on the 1, and then we get 3 notes happening on second, 8th notes. The difference is the notes change. So we're going B, A, G at the end of that 4-bar bass line. Cool. Our second half of the bass line has this chromatic walking thing where we're going C natural up to C sharp, and then finally all the way up to D. That's repeating, and then finally we get the D sharp. That's makes that, again, the 5 chord that happens, the major 5, our B major chord. That makes it feel like it's inverted because that's not a B. That's our D sharp. That's the second note from the chord. Cool. And then finally we go back into the biggest section of the drop that we've heard. It's the same, all the same notes that we've already talked about happening. One of the differences mix-wise, we get an extra layer development of the melody. We get a much bigger chord sound in the background. Cool. So I'm going to play this instrumental, just that breakdown into the ending. Then we'll call it a day. Hope you enjoyed this breakdown. Here it is. one thing I didn't talk about was this vocal effect. Believe it or not, that is my voice. I'm definitely not a singer, but a lot of that is from affecting. So I'm sending it into an auto tune, I'm hard tuning it, and then I'm using Little Altar Boy by Sound Toys, a really cool pitch and format shifting plugin to take the pitch and formats up a whole octave. That sounds pretty close to what TheFatRat did. I wonder if he even used Sound Toys. Again, Little Altar Boy, super cool, funny name for a pitch shifting plugin. Awesome. So hopefully I didn't move at too fast of a speed. I really want to keep these videos short enough that if you want, you can spend like 30 minutes and make it through it all. I perhaps seemed rushed today because we have had a lot to cover. So once again, we got a chance to talk about E melodic minor. Thank you so much to TheFatRat for writing such an awesome piece of music. Again, E melodic minor. I don't know when we'll have a chance to talk about a scale like that again. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Just leave a comment. If you found this helpful, you would help me out a ton by subscribing to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications so you find out when I make a new video. I always say this, but please be kind to your fellow human being. It's the least we can do to try to make it a more pleasurable time on this earth for our fellow human beings. So once again, my name's Andrew. I will see you next time. Have a great day. Cheers.